Okay, sounds good.
Okay, sounds good.
And Chrissy, I will be sending you something for the newsletter. I know I'm late, like always.
It's deadline today. We're good.
It will happen. It will happen.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I started to set up something for September, and I said, I've got my Teachable account. Let me just see if I can figure this out. I got 50% of it done. So today I'll work on the rest of it. Because you know what? It's like with anything, like with writing, it's usually not the writing that's the hard part. It's sitting down to do it. And I just said, I can't break it. No. If it doesn't work, I won't publish it. Nobody else will see what I'm doing. And it made me, understand it. And I felt really good about that. So
yay.
Oh, and August 29th is it Indie Bookstore Day? I think it is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think it is.
Yes.
I'll put something out about that, but I think yes, I think that's what which is very cool. Does anybody here subscribe to audio books through Libros.fm? Libros is an alternative.
Dan, Bodie, hello.
Hi, Cher.
And support your local bookstores.
Great to see you.
It's pretty cool. So I'm checking it out.
Hi, Jan.
Who said that?
Mwah.
I know. This is the Brady Bunch.
So I want Robbie to know that we are in a heat wave here in Northern California.
I heard. I'm sorry to hear that. Robbie Summers.
Yeah, it's really hot outside.
I know. That's what I heard. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And they're turning off the electricity again, right?
Of course.
Well, I haven't heard that. Please.
It hasn't been.
rolling
They did
blackouts.
last night.
They're rolling blackouts in our area in Cloverdale.
Oh, I was imagining.
Really?
How did it get there yesterday, Roger?
Right?
How high was the temperature yesterday?
110.
Oh my
Oh my
God.
gosh.
Oh.
That was 105
Oh my
right
gosh.
Wow.
Yeah,
It was. Then it
yeah, it's
seems
really
like it
hot.
was been cool here because it didn't break 100.
I cooked hamburgers without charcoal briquettes.
What'd you do? Cook them on the sidewalk?
Yeah.
I used to try to do things, and I was
Yeah,
not
that's a
successful.
feat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we got Judy. It's 1:05.
Okay, I'm
okay.
going to turn it over
Let's
to
get
you.
started.
I'm going to chit chat for a little bit, and
A little bit
then
more?
we'll pass it over. So we'll have time to let a few more in.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I'll go ahead and make you host, and I think you can see that. I'll keep watching the chat too.
All right. So Marilyn, you're the
Wait a minute,
host.
I heard
Welcome
it.
everybody. We have another great meeting in store, and I'm excited to hear from Alia to talk about memoir writing and this wonderful book. I don't know if you guys can see this. We all got the invitation, but home baked. I can't wait to read it and hear what it's all about.
Oh, wait a minute.
We have several new members, and we've got 2 screens going. So any new members, Roger, I think, said there's 7 or 8 new people that have just joined the club. So by a show of hands, go ahead and wave so we can know who you are and welcome you to the club.
John, there are
an
now
opportunity
10
for
10
members
new
to
members.
announce.
John, there are 10 new members as of today.
How many? 10?
Oh,
10.
Wow. Awesome.
that's good.
So a couple other announcements, just heads up. We've got Cher's got to leave early, so she will be having a salon that I believe is sold out for speakers on August 22nd. And then there's a couple other events coming up that I'll mention at regular club announcements after the meeting. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Marilyn to introduce Alia, and we'll get the meeting started. Welcome, everybody.
Right. Well, at last, Alia. Welcome. Truly a welcome. We've been looking forward to your featured presentation for many months. In fact, well before the pandemic struck and the advent of the Zoom virtual meetings, which I've come to basically not like. But oh well, as good as it gets. So I want to shout out to Amanda McPike for recommending Alia for her presentation today. I think she brought us a really wonderful person, a talented individual whom we can learn lots from. So Amanda, thank you for doing that. So in fact, it's been marvelous to see how the power of your storytelling, Alia, has overcome many obstacles of this pandemic already. You've successfully launched the debut of your first book, a memoir entitled Home Baked, which Sean showed everybody. I don't know if you can see it here. Is that, can you see? During this challenging time. And since the book released in April, you've gotten great reviews. I've read several of them from many prominent sources, including an interview with Terry Gross on NPR's Fresh Air, a notable blurb in the New York Review of Books, and an interview with Copperfield's Books here in Sonoma County, and I'm sure there are many others. So why all the buzz about your writing and about your book? As you've pointed out, this craft talk today will explore the challenges and advantages of enriching personal writing with research. I see this combination of telling this tale about when you were a young girl in the 1970s and 80s in San Francisco as a tale very much worth telling, but greatly enhanced by your extensive research into the period when the city was known for hippies and a raging AIDS epidemic. One reviewer, David Talbot, said about your memoir, it's deeply touching, funny, wise, and magical, all of which I experienced when I read it. Volz joins the colorful parade of writers who have brought San Francisco values fully to life, including Hunter S. Thompson, Armistead Maupin, Richard Brodigan, Dave Eggers, and then he named several more. So it's clear you're in really good literary company, Alia, and I know we're in good company with you today when you talk about memoir, the art of questioning everything. So it's all yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I cried when I read that blurb from David, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, I did it. That was what I came here to do. But yeah, it's been an extraordinary experience launching this year. Of course, many challenges, and yet at the same time, so many other doors have opened. People are reading a lot, and we're able to get together over great distances as we are here. So I'm very much heartened to see the room full. Thank you everyone for coming, and I hope that I can share something useful with you. So I came to personal writing very reluctantly. I didn't think of myself as a memoirist, and although I come from a pretty colorful family that's good fodder for memoir, I've always been someone who's I need more mystery. I wasn't that interested in writing about things that I already knew. You know, there's this adage, we've all heard it to death, right? Write what you know. But I just felt like I wanted to explore different worlds. And so I spent a lot of time with fiction. And it wasn't until I had a particular breakthrough working on a particular essay that I learned to see also the journey inward through this basket of snakes, so to speak, but through the weirdness in my own mind as a journey and as something that is also full of mystery and wonder and confusion. And this was a real breakthrough moment for me. It allowed me to write the book that I've been wanting to write for a long time, and yet still make it personal. You know, so that was really what it cracked the world open, and I really haven't gone back to fiction writing since then. So what I wanted to do was share with you that revelation. I think it'll be a little bit easier to talk about in essay form, simply because we can go all the way through an essay in an hour. So I'm going to talk through the essay that taught me to do this kind of writing. And all of this can be extrapolated to the long form memoir process. Let me see if I can get this slideshow going.
Aaliyah, it's Sean. We got to have Marilyn pass the baton of hosting over to you real quick. And go ahead and unmute yourself.
Marilyn, I'm sorry. You need to make Aaliyah host. Just hover over her name and turn it over to her. And Aaliyah, we're just getting a little bit of clicking in your audio. So I don't know. We had a little trouble with that last time too.
Can she be made a co-host?
It's not how she has it set up.
Okay.
I'm the host now. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
So,
okay,
so I can
everybody mute yourself, please.
And let's get that going. I'm going to share my slideshow. All right, starting from the beginning. Okay, is everybody able to see the slideshow? Yes? Okay, so so I want to talk about this particular essay because, as I say, it really cracked the world open for me, and then I was able to take those tools and apply it to memoir writing. In contemporary personal writing, self-interrogation has become a major way of organizing the plot, and it can become the main driving force of a story. And there are many writers these days who are working with it. We'll go through some of those examples later as we go along. One concept that I want to talk about as we're getting going here I think one of the crucial revelations in this kind of writing is understanding and really thinking about how the brain is a kind of labyrinth and how memory is a kind of labyrinth, and we hide things from ourselves. There's what we allow ourselves to see at any given point and what we think we're after and what we think we're doing, what we think we want. And then there are all of these other compulsions that are happening beneath the surface that are often what really drive our actions. And so what can be so exciting about personal writing is figuring out how to open those doors for yourself. So it can be this process where you really learn a great deal about yourself. And for me, mystery, the element of mystery, is absolutely crucial to that. There's a book that I recommend. One other concept to talk about is that in personal writing, the you that's on the page, it's not you in all of your fullness, right? You're essentially a character. You learn to make yourself a character on the page. And one of the books that I found helpful in craft is David Corbett's The Art of Character. And there's one takeaway that I want to share with you because it's going to be relevant to what we're talking about. Corbett talks about how, we all know that a character is supposed to desire something, right? And that desire is essential for moving a memoir forward. But he talks about the concept of complex desires. So what happens when what you think you desire, what you're going after, is not what you really want or really need? So he says, sometimes we don't recognize what we're really longing for until someone or something happens along to deliver a swift kick in the teeth, jarring us out of our stupor. Perhaps we actively suppress, deny, or in some other way hide from what we need. Our desires may be layered or nested, with one used to veil another. We secretly want more, but are too shy, too remiss, too riddled with doubt, or scarred by previous failure to pursue. And I feel like that's a really essential understanding to come to in writing, because it makes our characters so much more interesting. And in personal writing, our characters are ourselves. So it makes us much more interesting on the page. He gives a great example. I'm sure most of you have at least seen the film Midnight Cowboy, if not read the book. And one of the examples he gives that I think is so great, he says, such stories are marked by two layers of conflict. One, the dramatic action as the protagonist pursues the misbegotten object of desire he's convinced he wants. And two, the dramatic tension created as the increasingly unsatisfactory results of his quest slam him again and again into the key truth he's trying to avoid. He wants something else. So in Midnight Cowboy, he says, Joe Buck fails repeatedly in his misbegotten bid to become a New York hustler, only to finally realize that what it was he was truly craving all along, intimacy. So this tension of the surface desire, what we're able to acknowledge to ourselves, and the secret desire or the secret need that we hide from ourselves, it can be just wonderful fodder for essays and memoir. And that this is the kind of essay that we're going to dismantle today. So Snakebit was published in the Three Penny Review in spring of 2016, and it was chosen by Leslie Jamison for the Best American Essays in 2017. Leslie Jamison writes this kind of essay a lot. This is the basic structure that I'm going to be talking about that works for memoir or for personal essay. Structure it like a murder mystery. So we're going to go through this page again, but these are the questions that get asked in this essay. And the lettering in red is how that relates to the plot arc. A mystery, then you hit a dead end, then there's a red herring, then finally a clue, and then another clue when you're hot on the trail, and then there's a confession and a moment of clarity and the end, which is very similar to a whodunit. But this is in deeply personal writing. So we'll see how that plays out. Okay, here is Snakebit. And I'm just gonna go through it with you and then, point out the moments in which this structure is being built. And I'll let you know as we go how I got there. So wait, I've gone ahead. How do I go back? Sorry.
The controls should be at the bottom of your.
Oh, there it is.
I know, they're kind of hiding.
Sorry. All right, let me go back to the beginning here. Oh God. Beginning. Okay. My apologies. Here we are. Here we are. Okay. So here's where the essay starts. We meet a fat diamondback 5 minutes down the trail. He's stretched across the path, dozing in the shade of a juniper bush. I'm an adult, so I want to act like one, but I'm crying so hard I can't inhale and snot is dribbling into my mouth. It takes me 20 minutes to inch past the viper while his tongue whips the air. After that, I search out a long, heavy stick to thump on the ground and jostle the creosote scrub before passing. My husband, Kevin, and our 2 friends are sympathetic, but my pace is agonizingly slow and they drift ahead. I hear them chattering always around the next bend while blood bangs through my head like a taiko drum. The whole park is rattlesnake color and it's breeding season. We camp among the mating snakes for 3 nights. We hear no rattles, receive no death threats. Exhaustion renders my terror quiet and viscous. Snake, I breathe as we ease past yet another languid viper loop beside the trail. They're draped everywhere, as in my dreams. The last one we crossed is painted to the frontage road. It must have bitten an oncoming tire. Its mouth is spread open like a flower. The tiny yellow points of its teeth splayed. The pink flesh of its throat is turning to leather in the desert sun. So what I've highlighted in red here, these are the moments that are asking the question. This is the inciting question of the piece. In a murder mystery, you find the body and maybe there's a window sash and a scrap of fabric. And that's all you have to go on. And you're writing into a mystery. For me, the question is, I'm obviously not reacting in a normal way. My friends are handling this normally. I am handling this very abnormally, and I don't understand why. So that starts the quest. What the heck is my problem? That's the first question. So I try to answer that question in what seems like the most obvious way. What is my problem? Here's somebody coming in the room, excuse me. All right, new person. So I try to simply figure it out. And I have in my memory an incident with my dad where he got bit by a snake. And so here's a conversation. Notice, varying also scene and setting. I think we all know about that. But here's a conversation with my dad where I say, do you remember that? It traumatized me. Do you remember this getting bitten? He says, not sure I know what you're talking about. How could you forget? You showed me the fang marks when I was little, and it scared me to death. I never got over it. You must be thinking of someone else. I don't believe him. We argue about it politely, since we've both come to value our friendly distance. That's another clue. Then I call mom, so she'll take my side. Dad forgets everything, and she remembers everything. That's how it works. Not that I know of, honey, she says. Your father did some dumb shit, but I think he steered clear of rattlesnakes. So this is a dead end. But if we're looking at self-interrogation as a plot point, this is in fact the beginning, right? Because now I have a really cool mystery. Now I have a false memory. I have this terrible memory of my dad getting bitten and it didn't happen. So in reality, at this point in the writing process, I stopped and I wrote every memory I could think of that involved snakes. I thought, I've got to get to the bottom of this. If this phobia is not based on what I thought it was based on, then what is it about? So the next question then is, why do I have a false memory? And here's where I'm going to show my confusion as a person, as a human, as a writer on the page. And this is really important. It's like doing long division. If you make a mistake, you go the wrong way, keep it on the page. It's so interesting to read, okay? So now I'm going to review the memory. Dad sits on the edge of his bed. I'm curled on the rug at his feet, an Alice in Wonderland pop-up book open on my lap. I'm 6 years old and I do not understand why his eyes look so strange, his ice blue irises walled behind dilated pupils. He has just returned from a week alone in the woods, what he calls a vision quest. He's come home snake bit. We can also get from the dilated pupils that he's probably high, right? Dad rolls up the left leg of his lavender bell bottoms to show me the weeping punctures. His calf is swollen, the skin waxy and yellow like pork rind, blue rings, moondog, the fang marks, and raised gray veins jitter to his ankle. Notice that the language is so vivid that it's dreamlike, it's almost hallucinatory, which is a great way to convey emotional stakes, emotional intensity. I'm showing you, not telling you that this is the most vivid memory of my childhood. I'm sweating in my footy pajamas, the canary yellow ones that are so small they force my toes to curl. I've been told countless times that rattlesnakes are deadly, so I don't understand why he's still alive. He could die in front of me. The hot flannel constricts around my body and I tear at the metal snap at my throat. Again, showing, not telling fear, right? How could this, here's the question, possibly the most vivid memory of my childhood, inspiration for decades of ophidiophobic behavior, be false? This memory feels solid in my history, a flagstone lodged between our trip to Disneyland and the death of my first cat. If I invented this memory, I don't know why or when. The question gets under my skin. Sorry. I write essays about my father, scour childhood memories, and peek between my fingers at YouTube videos of snakes, scaring myself so badly one night that I run to find Kevin. You'll give yourself nightmares, he chides. I already have him. So it's a total murder mystery for me right now. I have no idea why I'm lying to myself for all these years. Really no idea. So here's where I stopped. And this essay in truth took me many months to figure out. Here's where I stopped and I wrote out everything I could think about that I had experienced with snakes, trying to find the true origin, since what I thought was true is not true. Snakes take up inordinate space in my memory bank. I recall 52 specific encounters with wild snakes, a card deck of terror. Each image is crystalline, the snake's pattern, the sunlight gleaming on its skin. Whether its body was looped or unfurled or some disorienting combination of both, whether it darted, oozed, or froze, against showing, not telling fear. Equally sharp are times when I thought I saw a snake and it turned out to be something else, a lizard, a half-buried root. But my mind thought snake and triggered phobic hyper-awareness. My highlight reel also includes photography from nature books and some truly awful YouTube videos. The viper whose decapitated head bites its own dying body. The snake who eats a spider and which then consumes it from the inside out. The infant who sleeps peacefully on a platform surrounded by hooded cobras. I am welcoming you all into my phobia. This is what it's like to be me. But this is, it's very effective, I want to say, when you set up a mystery like this, you find something that the writer truly doesn't know, and then invite the reader to come along on the journey to try to solve it. This is why we love to read Sherlock Holmes, and because we get to feel like we're solving a mystery along with the narrator, along with our hero. And in Personal Essay, you can be that hero. So I'm pausing to set the stakes, telling you this is why it matters. All right, next question. When did the phobia start? Now I'm obsessed with figuring it out. I want to anchor my fear to a moment in time, but I can't find a sturdy one. And then, here I'm going to go into another vivid memory. I'm going to summarize a little bit because I don't want to run out of time. But I'm going to go into another vivid memory that happened earlier. And it's where we had these chicks out on this farm and the chicks got massacred. And it was really gruesome. It left one survivor flailing in bloody dirt. Half the chick's leg had been ripped away and its screams were tinny and tireless. Dad drowned it to end its suffering. Well, that's traumatic, but it's a dead end. Only it wasn't a snake, my mom told me recently, but a fox. A fox makes much more sense. A fox could cause frenzy in a chicken coop. A snake, well, couldn't. After 2 or 3 little chicks, a snake would look like a sock stuffed with tennis balls. It would be too sluggish and protuberant to slither back through the wire. Slaughtering 11 chicks would require a whole den of snakes. I have to remind myself of this because for me, it has always been a large brown snake pouring itself through the chicken wire and lurking in the straw until the first innocent blundered near. Then I have a little fun, with it. I should have a fear of foxes, vulpophobia. And I'm trying to figure out, what is it really that I'm afraid of? And I conclude that I'm not afraid to be bitten. I'm not afraid of the venom. It's something else. And this is a dead end, but it's a dead end that opens onto a clue because I'm discovering that the phobia is not related to the things I think it is, right? So that leads to the next question. What is unique about snakes? They are shapeshifters. Snakes materialize out of nothing, ordinary rocks, twigs, and leaves, reminding us that perception is untrustworthy. You can never tell just how long a snake is, where its body begins and ends. They may fold themselves 3 times, 6 times, a dozen times. They move like water and shine like grease, but their skin is dry as dust. Snakes are deception, surprise, mutability. They violate the predictable. Snakes are agents of chaos. Huge clues. These are huge clues. I'm starting to figure something out that this phobia of snakes is connected to deception. It's connected to shape-shifting. It's connected to things not being reliable. So this is the first solid lead. And I also just want to point out that this comes halfway through the piece, which is classic in whodunit structure. And also want to say that like this writing, this is a lot of free writing about snakes to come to this point. And then you put it together afterwards. It doesn't jump out of your brain whole like Athena. Well, maybe it does for some people, but it doesn't for me. So here I'm going to reinforce the stakes again, and I won't go through this scene, but I'm reestablishing that my reaction to snakes is completely unreasonable and not like how other people react. Other people are not terrified of garter snakes, harmless little things, and I hyperventilate. So that's just kind of it's good to reintroduce stakes, I think, a few different times. But this brings me to looking at an ordinary person's fear of snakes versus mine brings me to the next question. What is the difference between fear and phobia? Pointing out that my fears are ridiculous. I'm afraid to go into a porta potty because I think I'm convinced a snake is going to be inside of it. Like how silly is that? I'm afraid to pick my horse's hoof because she might have stepped on a snake and I might see a body, segment of a body. So when Diane says she's afraid of snakes, she means she's afraid of dangerous snakes, biting snakes, aggressive snakes. Delicate garter snakes don't qualify. Fear and phobia are different planets, separated by vast airless space. It's important to take a step back and define as you're figuring out your mysteries. Let's figure out, here's what we know, here's what we don't know. And you come to that a few different times. And that question, talking about fear and phobia, leads to another clue. Talking about snake bite being easy to avoid, how unlikely it is that I really would be harmed by a snake, especially in California, where none could actually kill me. But venom, which is to say real danger, has nothing to do with this. When a startled snake whips into action, the ground itself appears to move. Solid becomes liquid. Inanimate becomes animate. Nothing is what you think it is. Nothing is safe. And again, a big clue, I'm starting to understand things that I never knew about myself. So now that I have a couple of clues, I'm going to go back to the first two questions that started this whole thing. WTF is my problem, and why do I have a false memory? And this brings it back to my dad. So I keep returning to a false memory of my father's snake bite. A grand mal epileptic with a penchant for going off his meds, he was profoundly unreliable and prone to sudden dramatic changes. He took LSD and peyote. He changed his name and then changed it back. When I was 9, he suffered a psychotic break, shaved all the hair off his body and face, and plucked his eyelashes out. Because my dad's instability disturbed me, I believed him snake bit, as if all things not what they seemed must be touched by snakes, which is the first real revelation I, have had. The closest I've gotten to understanding after a lifetime of this terror, and it comes through the writing. So I'm coming back in some ways to the stakes again, coming back to more images of snakes and seeing if I can relate to them in a new way. And I'll read this part. In dreams, I walk gauntlets of coiled snakes. Snakes tangle in my hair. They bite my hands or my feet. They wriggle into my open mouth. I find snakes in my bed, in the ocean, in the car, in the sky. They invade good dreams and bad. Sometimes they're beautiful, which is the first time I admitted that to anybody, that I think they're beautiful. At least one snake lurks in every dream I remember, which is to say that if I have a dream without a snake, it's forgettable, unimportant. Isn't this persistent terror also a hope, also a call? By obsessing, I keep them close and present, inflating the importance of these humble belly-walking creatures beyond reason. Again, I think of my father, how parenthood temporarily transforms a half-broken person into a sort of God whose thoughtless gestures define his child's world. It's unfair to be a parent, unfair to be a child. And what did any snake ever do to me? Nothing. I'm the stalker. So it's a confession. And if you think of it in the whodunit format, I'm the criminal and the sleuth, right? And that this is one of the magical things that can happen in personal essay and in memoir. If you can penetrate your own deception, you can come to some really exciting moments. And that again is just following these questions. But this is like the big reveal, like in Scooby-Doo, where you pull off the hood and it's the neighbor, except you pull off the hood and it's you. And then this is, okay, that leads to the next thing. So now that I have some understanding about, this hate-love situation with snakes, do I want to get better? So I talk about exposure therapy as being the common treatment, the pervasive treatment for phobia, which it is. And there's a scene where I'm going to dinner with my husband. It's a fancy restaurant having a wild game night, and they're serving a rattlesnake pot sticker. And I have the opportunity to eat it, which but I'm thinking of exposure therapy. I'm thinking about this essay and like, maybe this is good for me. Maybe this is a step in the right direction to minimize it so that it's not, you know, this thing that I can't even confront, I can't be around. And I try to take a bite and I end up spitting it out. So do I even want to heal? The answer in this context is no, not really. I'm not ready to let go. And that's okay. That's an okay ending, you know, for one of these stories. And then this is the very end. Oops. Let's see, this is the very end. My husband and I are in Cave City, Kentucky, and there's a huge black snake whips out in front of me, and I hyperventilate, and it's horrible, utterly terrifying. But we go on our cave tour, and then I wander away from everybody, and there's a moment where I'm looking through glass and I see the snake again in the garden, and nobody's watching me, and I'm just kind of alone with the snake through glass. So between plants, I see what looks like a looped black hose, but I know. I stand with my nose centimeters from the glass and watch the liquid body wind through the flowers. It seems to touch everything, to be everywhere at once. In the afternoon sun, it looks dipped in oil. The snake pauses and lifts its head out of a bed of tulips. The face and neck are surprisingly delicate for such a hefty body. Maybe it's because of the pink tulips, but it strikes me as female. I watch her taste the air with her tiny vibrating tongue. The snake has seen or heard or felt me watching. She watches me back with keen black eyes. I've never subscribed to the idea that animals are dumb, nobody home, driven by mindless instinct. Yet this is the first time I've sensed a snake's intelligence. She's just going about her afternoon business, maybe hoping to score a meal while soaking up enough sun to stay mobile at night when she must avoid the owls. She is herself and I am myself, and we have nothing to do with each other. My exhalations have fogged the glass, but I notice that I'm breathing calmly. I'm seeing past my own trickery, how I use snakes as scapegoats for terrors I will not face, how they are my favorite shield. This phobia does not end with this. Walking through grass will always make my blood hammer, but I've been granted a reprieve here, a moment of empathy for the she snake, and with that, compassion for my most stubborn parts, the parts that refuse to mend. And that is the end. So coming back to where we started, structuring it like a murder mystery, you know, think about how this can apply to your own work. These were the questions. Why am I so phobic? Where did the false memory come from? When did the phobia begin? What's unique about snakes? These questions in and of themselves are not that compelling, right? But when you look at how they stack up and how one leads to another and how your dead ends, each time you hit a dead end, you try another angle, you try to find a new facet, a new way in. So if you're trying to find your way past your own defenses, you're trying to trick yourself into a revelation. And where I came to at the end of this essay was stuff I did not know at the beginning of writing it. So, and that's, it's important because I think, like, I mean, certainly when we're just starting out and we're writing college essays and high school essays and whatever, we're taught to start out with an argument. You're starting out to make a point. You know what the end is before you start the beginning, and everything is leading up to a conclusion that you're already hoping to make. And I think that some people write personal essays that way too, and sometimes it works, but a lot of times it feels self-indulgent, and it feels boring, because you can tell that the author already knows. Like you can tell when the question is rhetorical and when the question is sincere. And so if you can find mystery in your own life and ask yourself sincere questions and be a little relentless about it, you can come to revelations that are new for you, and they will also feel new and fresh to the reader. So tips, your inciting question should be something you honestly don't know how to answer, or it won't feel authentic. Think of it as a whodunit. You might be the sleuth and the criminal. Convey the stakes through scene and imagery. Always notice how much imagery was in that piece, right? That's how you establish, that's how you share your emotional connection to your material, and your reader will experience an emotional connection in the same way. When you hit a dead end, try a different question. Dead ends are gifts, and it's hard to think of it that way. Confusion is a gift. Contradiction is a gift. Home baked is very heavily driven by research. I interviewed over 60 people extensively to write this book. And of course, there were moments where I would hear completely opposing stories about the same incident. And then there's also historical record. So what do I do? Whose version do I pick? And I learned to see that as an exciting moment to break down, ask more difficult questions of the material, re-ask about my intent, my intention, why am I there? What am I trying to do? And also you can put, what I really like to do is put those different versions, those conflicting versions, lay them both out. Let the reader see what a mess this is. And it's really fun to read that kind of stuff. It's honest, and people can tell that it's honest. So allow your confusion mistakes to unfold. When you've found some clues, go back to your original questions, take note of your progress, if there has been any. Conclusion, there's no need to tie it up with a bow. If you go back and look at the questions that I asked, I probably answered 2, maybe 3 of these. Most of them go unanswered. You follow it until you get to a better question. So another way that I like to think about this kind of writing is that it's not important to come up with answers. The point of the essay is to find the most interesting question. And sometimes that's the end of the essay or the book. Some great essays and books end on questions. Here it is. This is what I'm supposed to ask, and then you ask it. So here are a few of my favorite contemporary self-interrogators. We've got books here, we've got essays. You might not think of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks as being that kind of book. It's not a traditional memoir. But as she's researching the material, she uses her own confusion, her own blundering as a young white journalist, interacting with people who have been abused by journalists and scientists and whatnot, and uses her own confusion around what matters. How do I reach these people? How do I make sure that my intentions are pure? So she self-interrogates as a way of moving the story forward. And there are huge breakthroughs that happen as a consequence of those questions. Fact of a Body, just one of my very favorites. How to Be Anti-Racist. A lot of us are reading this. This is an interesting book because it's a combination. He is making arguments. He has a very clear point of view. He has a very clear argument he wants to make. But in the parts where he brings memoir into it, which every chapter has a good chunk of memoir, those are always self-interrogating. He starts out saying, what were the questions I was asking when I was 10? These were those questions. These were the answers I thought. This is what I thought I knew. And this is how I learned I was wrong, which leads to the next question and the next chapter. So a lot of great examples, empathy exams, just everything in there, really. Heart and Other Monsters is a new book. It's really, really beautiful. And she uses this approach of her sister has recently died of a drug overdose, and she comes at that terrible moment of her sister's death from all these different angles, and it actually explodes kind of halfway through the book into a murder mystery. It is so awesome. That's brand new. My Father the Pornographer, In the Dream House. Think about how Carmen Maria Machado is using this, looking at her memories through different facets, right? Through the model of a fairy tale, through the model of a noir, through the model of And that is self-interrogation. So anyway, and Saint Joan Didion of the unanswered question, we all know what that looks like. So let's see, I thought I had one more. Yeah, and so here are some suggestions of good places to start for self-interrogating writing. I mean, really the options are limitless, but I just wanted to give you some ideas. Some memories seem to shimmer in a weird way. And I don't know if you've noticed that. And I can't always figure out why they shimmer, like why that moment, why those red shoes? But those can be good moments to write through and try to dismantle, because something hooked into your mind then, and it might not be what you expect. Shame, pride, bravery, cowardice, all those things. Something you remember differently from your siblings, parents, friends, false memory idea. But why are people coming at this differently? There's usually an emotional core there when people remember things. I mean, people remember things differently, but when there's a major life event that people remember differently, there's something going on that you can dig into. Regrets, dreams that won't leave you alone, a time when you were cruel to somebody. That's really fertile. Unpack why, and why it sticks with you, and be relentless about that. It's not just about like berating yourself, it's about understanding why it sticks with you, understanding the complexity of a situation that you might understand when you begin in a very one-dimensional way. So anyway, these are some ideas. I'm going to stop the share and then see you. I know some questions popped up in the chat, and let's see. I'd love to answer some questions if anyone has them. I guess how can we do that?
The best way is if you have a question, hover over your name and raise your hand, and then we can call on you. And I see Amanda has a question. So Amanda, unmute yourself.
Oh, I see where that is. Okay.
So Alia, hi. Hi. Good Lord, that was so helpful. Wait, I'm turning down my fans a little bit. Off the charts helpful.
Oh, good.
Here's what I want you to help me with is the reluctance that I feel and others feel, writers feel, about really trusting not knowing, really letting go and sitting down to write and not quite knowing where you're headed. Mm-hmm. So that reluctance is so interesting to me. And I'm just wondering whether there were any illuminating moments for you, either early in the process of writing the memoir or maybe later in the editing, where you were being challenged to go back and let go and not know, and you didn't want to, and how you got yourself back to it the right way.
Right. Well, the whole piece was about that for me, because, I thought that I was going to write something about snakes. I mean, I even thought I was going to go more into research, and I don't know, I thought it would be completely different than what happened. But when I ran into this fact of a false memory, for me, it was just like this huge, flashing light. Something is going on here that's much bigger than what you think it is. And if you can learn to see that as an adventure, I mean, think about it like if you're going on a trip and you're going to go somewhere, some part of the world that maybe scares you a little, maybe you don't know what you're going to encounter, as one never does on a trip. But it's an adventure, and you get there by opening yourself up to, well, here we go. I'm going to be as careful as I can, but here we go. And if you're traveling and you're shut down and you're not interrogating yourself and your environment while you're traveling, you're wasting the trip. You might as well stay home, right? So in personal writing is a lot like that. You do not have to share your writing with anybody. If you write something and in the end it just feels too personal, maybe you've learned something about yourself and gotten some therapy without spending, thousands of dollars on weekly consultations. Good, go with it. But you also may find, for me, it was a huge breakthrough and it affected my writing from then on out. So any other questions?
Kimberly, unmute yourself.
Hi, Alia. Really enjoyed your presentation, and I was wondering how would you, by definition, differentiate between a short story and an essay, like a short memoir story and an essay?
Okay, so when you say short story, you're not talking about fiction?
Right.
The difference between very short memoir and an essay?
Right.
I don't know if there's much of a difference. Yeah, I definitely, the term essay means attempt, it means to try. So you are trying something, you're trying to accomplish something, but a lot of times, I think of essays a lot of times as being mini memoirs. And in the same sense, a memoir can be a maximalized essay, which is why I feel like these same structural ideas can apply to the larger memoir form as well.
Roger, you're next up, and then Stephanie.
Roger, you're muted.
Yeah, good. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I think the analysis of the murder mystery was extremely clever way of looking at it, because it built a lot of structure for us. We have a contest going on right now to write a real or imagined travel story. And in writing a travel or vacation related experience from my childhood in the 60s, I wrote about 5,000 words and then had to cut out all these sections because it's too long. And I commented to my wife that I'm cutting out all the things that I'm critical of, because why will people want to know about those things?
Oh, go the other way.
And now I'm listening to your analysis, I realize those are the interesting questions I'm ignoring.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way for our writers to think about their memoirs or anything that's nonfiction, is that sometimes they PC it, and they're ignoring the really tough, interesting questions because they're hard to answer. But your outline and your presentation really helped with that.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I find it, I mean, everyone is different, but I find that it is easier for me to, from an emotional standpoint, to write memoir when I am able to be critical of myself and interrogate my past actions than if I'm writing something where I'm like the hero of the story and goody two shoes or something like that. That sort of embarrasses me because I don't know, it feels too self-congratulatory. I find it easier to write something in which I allow my past self to be villainous in some way. But it also just makes for a much more interesting character. And the fact of the matter is that we're all heroes and villains, right? That duality is it's very honest. And it's also worth thinking about, in thrillers or detective novels or in comic books, how often the villains are more engrossing than the heroes. That complexity, acknowledging that complexity and that darkness. And the villains always have these great origin stories too. Some terrible loss that made them that way. I mean, the best villains are people who you can empathize with. So allowing yourself on the page to be a more complex character and to have villainous attributes, that's another reason that the distance that we get, you're writing about something from the 60s, you're not that guy anymore. You don't have to, you don't have to have done everything right at that time. Admitting that you have did things in the past that you wouldn't do in the future is something that everyone can sympathize with. It makes you a very sympathetic character. Yeah, so good. I'd be excited to see what you come up with. Thanks. Sounds like a cool piece.
Hey, Stephanie, you had a question?
Yeah. Hi, Alia.
Hi.
Thank you very much for this, and I hope the slides will be available after. The structure, like a murder mystery, like many people have said, is very helpful. So as someone also who's is transitioning from fiction back into sort of personal essay territory and memoir, and also I'm digging into family stuff. And what I'm discovering is that the more I dig, the more I find, and I don't really know how to stop. And so in addition to this helpful murder mystery structure, which I was like frantically taking notes about how it applied to the current 6,000 word mess I'm in, but do you have any other techniques for sort of narrowing that focus? And because like you said, or like was just said by Roger, just this idea of like taking out the things that are kind of risky to say about yourself. Like I have no problems embarrassing myself, but I do have problems deciding what is interesting and what can be put aside. Like the path gets obscured very easily when the stuff is coming so quickly.
Two things immediately come to mind. If you can find a discrete thread, I guess, and this maybe I can give a better answer at the same time to the last question about what makes an essay an essay, is that it has a discrete thread that's internal to the piece, right? And if you can find, you might have a few discrete threads going on in your 6,000 word piece, but it's not necessarily all junk. And I'm someone, I write many thousand, and actually, this snake essay this was a different essay that kind of split into two. And so I had some snake writing and then I decided to do a snake essay, and it became a separate essays about the snakes and about my dad. So you can do that. And they're both, you can definitely get more mileage out of what you have. And a good writing group is essential to my process. I meet every 2 weeks with people. We exchange work in advance. We give written feedback. It's important that the people you work with in your writing group are people who are at a commensurate level with yours in some way, that you respect and admire their opinions and their work, that they understand the genre you're working in. Make sure you're getting feedback from good people at this stage. Later on, you have a full book, you want beta readers who are random a little bit. But if you're just still trying to find your way in a piece, make sure you're working with good people. But yeah, that feedback from trusted people they'll help you know, this is really interesting, that I'm kind of drifting. That kind of information can be helpful. Kimberly?
I think she got hers answered, but we had one more person, Virginia. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, and that's going to be our last one before we turn it back over to Sean.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you had interviewed people for a book, for one of the essays, and I wanted to ask you, how do you get people to interview?
Well, I don't know if there's a one-size-fits-all answer. So my book, this is really different from the piece I just read. This is not an essay collection, by the way. It's completely different. So my family had the first high-volume cannabis edibles business in San Francisco, and started in the 1970s, and they were distributing upwards of 10,000 brownies a month throughout the city. And then the AIDS crisis hit at the beginning of the 80s, and it became part of the dawn of the medical marijuana movement. So this book is about the transition from party drug to palliative medicine vis-a-vis the AIDS crisis. So it's completely different. I still use interrogative techniques that I learned doing this kind of essay, but it's very heavily interview driven. And in this case, I started interviewing my parents, who introduced me to their customers, who introduced me to growers, who introduced me. And there were also times when I sought people out like Cleve Jones or Dr. Donald Abrams, the AIDS doctor, and sought them out and sent them emails and, here's what I'm writing about and would you speak with me? So it entirely depends on what you're working with. There were people I found their names in, and mentioned in an article from the 70s and hunted them down on Facebook. I mean, it just really depends.
Okay, that's actually really helpful. It sounds like you started somewhere and just followed a thread and followed open doors.
Yeah, it really was that way. I didn't know when I started the book. I did hundreds and hundreds of hours of interviews, but when I started the book, I didn't know how important of a role the AIDS crisis would play in this story. And I didn't realize how important of a role my mom had in the beginning of medical marijuana, and how important that was to changing broader America's relationship toward cannabis. So that meant, we have legal access in many places now. How much all of that tied into the AIDS crisis. All of that was a process of following these leads and seeing where they would go. And there were a lot of dead ends, but again, dead ends are like, just ask another question, take it a different direction. It's not necessarily, it's not dead. A dead end isn't dead.
Lovely, thank you.
Hey, let's give Leah, everybody just give her a nice warm applause. It's not exactly the same as being in person, but fantastic presentation. And
Thank you so much.
I love memoir. I took notes, but I know that the slides are going to be available. So I just love how you created, you opened up my eyes to something that I hadn't totally thought of, is it's okay to try and go through the journey without having the answers ahead of time. And that's what I get to walk away with. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to move into member announcements now. Actually, we're going to do club announcements and then member announcements. I've got a couple exciting things just to share with you, and we're going to give ample time to Fran and Les regarding the poetry anthology that's coming up. So I want to make sure we have at least 10 minutes for them because it's so exciting. But there's a couple clubs out there that are, their membership and their volunteer efforts are not as solid as ours. And we have been approached by the Marin group, and starting in September, they are going to be joining us for our meetings and taking advantage of the speakers that we have. And in exchange for that, in spirit of 100% transparency, they're willing to offer $500 for the next 5 to 6, 7, 10 months to help underwrite our speaker fees. So we'll welcome them with open arms. They will reciprocate as they get back online and have speakers. So I wanted everybody to know that now, so you don't have to wait another month and go, who are all these people? And in terms of other club announcements, Roger, do you want to just talk briefly about membership, just brief where we're at?
Sure. We're welcome to everybody here who's a member and our new members. We're halfway through our membership renewal period. There's 45 days left. Membership closes on September 30th, meaning if you don't renew your membership becomes inactive, and then you have to rejoin as a new member, which is more expensive. So if you haven't renewed, it's very important to go on our website, go to the membership page, and hit the renewal button and go through the renewal process. Through this month, you can also still purchase the Express Pass, which allows you to have access to all of these meetings and all of the recordings for a reduced fee. And that's a real good bargain, so it's something to do. Right now, today, with our new members, including Gwen and Mary and several others I probably can't see, we are now at 300 members. We have 155 renewals and only have 130 that aren't renewed from our old membership. And we have 2 new members in the first month and a half of this drive. So all of you are to be congratulated for your effort. Thank you if you've renewed. If you haven't renewed, you're going to get a bunch of reminders in the next 45 days. So please remember to renew. But I want to thank everybody because other clubs are frightened that members won't come back because of the virus. We're already at 60% renewal. And we are the model for the other clubs, and that's why some clubs are joining us either as, if you will, sister and brother clubs or as dual members, because we offer the most of any club in the California Writers Club. That's enough for me, Sean.
That's awesome, Roger. And you know, it's a testament to not only leadership, but it's a testament to Marilyn and her team and the speakers that we have, because that's one of the main things that really people in surveys that we send out, people love to learn more and have that engaging thing that's going to make them better writers. So one thing that is top of the list from the survey that I did last year for the conference is we have not only a lot of people who like to write either personal essay or memoir, but poetry tops the list. So I am going to pass the baton over to our fearless editors who have done this multiple years in a row. And Fran and Les, take it away. You might have to unmute yourselves.
There, thank you. There's a great deal of comparability between memoir and poetry, I might say. A lot of our poetry that we write, and if you look at our last 3 books, you'll see a lot of the poems are memoiristic. They may not be full-fledged, but they will be like a moment in time. So I think of poetry often as moments. They're moments in the life journey. So if you think of that, a lot of what Alia said to us today will be applicable to writing poetry. And there is just so much about poetry. I'm 90 years old and I'm still learning. Every single day I learn something new about writing poetry. And my group does too. I have 2 groups now that we're both meeting on Zoom, and they are the heart of my work with poetry. I'm still a teacher, I can't help it. Whatever I do, that's my mode of operating in this world. So I'm going to be doing quite a lot of teaching in my poetry class, poetry group. They call it a class, the poetry group. But I wanted to say about critiquing, because Alia mentioned your writing groups. Our writing groups, poetry writing groups, have evolved in their ability to critique to a level that I never would have dreamed of 2 years ago. It is really, and Zoom has helped us. Zoom has helped us because we now receive our writing in advance. We write our own, write critiques back. They go to the whole group. We want to see what everybody says to everybody. And then on the Mondays that we meet on Zoom, we read our poems and review where the critique is at that point. So we're getting a lot more out of our critiquing than we did before Zoom. I have to say that. The other nice thing about Zoom on a personal level is I can hear. I have a lot of problem with hearing, but on Zoom, it's no problem at all. So I hope we can keep some semblance of that.
So Fran, I'm going to hold up the flyer, and if you can tell folks just a little snippet about what the anthology is, the deadline, if you guys want to mark it, it's all on the website, but November 15th is the deadline. I'm going to hold this up so you can try and see it briefly if you can, but you're probably not going to be able to. So go to the website.
How are we going to distribute flyers?
Yeah, just go to the website. It's all there. Take it back.
Okay, great. Okay.
We can send out emails too to announce specifically that.
What?
So what can you tell us about the anthology?
The anthology is going to be called Out of Silence, because we all have been on lockdown, quarantine. We all have a lot built up inside of us. And so this is an opportunity to come out of that silence and write poems of whatever sort you want. We have no restrictions on form, no restrictions on length, except don't go beyond like a page and a half, and just be sensitive to that. Les is not here today. As you may know, Les lost her husband not too long ago, and she is still in grief. And she has asked me to say hello to all of you. And we're in touch daily. So she's probably watching today. We want to express our thanks to those who help us, in addition to the board and Sean. Linda Reed is our go-to genius. Whenever we have a question, we go to Linda. Joanne Rosen is our genius for book design. She does that. For the submissions are now open. Here are some specifics. You can send as many as 5 poems. What we would like for you to do this year is put them all in a bundle. Send them all, however many poems you're going to send. If you can possibly do this, send them all at once. If something happens and you write a fabulous poem after you've sent them, of course, get in touch with us and we'll talk. But it would make it a lot easier if they come together. So in one Word document, all poems should be submitted through the website. They must be, of course, you're all members. They would be submitted through, it's submittable now, right? That they're going through. And they're very clear about how you do that. We would like everything to come in Word documents. We would like everything to come in 12-point Thames Roman and all that. Your name does not appear on the poem itself. Of course, we will know whose it is because of the way it's submitted. And then we want each person to write a short bio. And by short, we mean 50 words. Not 100, 50. Send your bio. And we have, excuse me, some restrictions on how to write the bio. We have a sample, I think on the handout. It says, seriously, no autobiographies. Starts with your name. Write it in the 3rd person. So you write about he or she, not about I in the bio. So give us a little bit of information about who you are, maybe a little about your publishing history. And let me go back to the speaker view. I got lost here. Okay. Submit your autobiography on the page when you submit the poem. It will show you where to put that. Just be sure when you write it that we don't have to rewrite it. Les spent a lot of time last year rewriting the bios because although we said the same thing, people neglected to follow those rules. And that means starting with the 3rd person, start with your name, and then write your 50-word bio. And don't go, some people just wrote pages. And I know we all have pages, that's for your memoir. Right. The poems must be original. They must be unpublished. If they have appeared in personal blog or an online newsletter, that's okay. But they must not have appeared even in a magazine or a journal. So it has to be an original poem. Poems should be in by the end of November, December 1st is our deadline, and you will be notified by December 1st which of your poems have been accepted. So that's our clue. They're open now. It's now August. That gives you August, September, October. So the deadline for submitting is, I think, that's not on the in here.
November 15th.
That's right. Thank you very much. So submit them by November 15th and you will be notified by the end of November, 1st of December. So we are looking forward to seeing your poems as always. And I'm just going to conclude with a very short poem called Out of Silence, because that's our title. Out of the white space, the distance between words, the distance between languages, the distance between us, into that silence, a word spoken, into that silence, a word heard. How is it heard? How does your hearing change my utterance? How does my listening allow your word to enter the silence? Word by word, the poem is spoken, is heard, changes the silence, charges the silence with sound. So that's just a little inspiration, I hope.
Fran, we are so grateful to have you do this. And I think last book we did, there was over 64 poems. I was fortunate enough to have one of mine accepted, and I know a lot of it. Just beautiful, beautiful work. So thank you. It's a lot of work.
If you haven't read last year's book, be sure to get it.
Thank you. I'm going to segue briefly with the Wish You Were Here contest. Again, that is also on the website. The deadline, if you're freaking out because the 19th is coming up, you have another month. It's September 19th. So if you haven't yet written your 2,000-word story, visit the website, redwoodwriters.org, look for the Wish You Were Here contest link, and all the details are there. And with that, we're going to allow anybody who has stuff coming up that they want to share, and we'll figure it out between me and Judy who wants to raise their hand and has something exciting to share with the club for member announcements.
To raise your hand, pop out the participant list and then hover over your name, and then you can see raise your hand underneath there if you've got an announcement.
And I see Kimberly now, who did both. So go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, I just, I'm unmuted, right? Okay. I just wanted to let you guys know, if anyone is interested in meeting members from another branch, we're having our annual social for Berkeley branch tomorrow. And ordinarily this would be what kind of was the state picnic for all members, and it kind of has carried on. But obviously we can't do that anymore. So, but they are inviting all branches to join online, and we're going to have kind of small micro groups, and you can kind of jump around. And we're also going to kind of blend in our two support groups, which is craft support and marketing support, which is my group. So we'll be talking about some things that, you know, we've been doing over the summer, and so I'd love to see some faces there. I'll put my email in the chat box so that if you have any questions, you can just contact me.
Oops, unmute myself. Thank you, Kimberly. The poetry contest should be on the website. If it's not, I will follow through with Joelle and make sure that that gets loaded. I assumed that it was there. When I looked, I thought it was there. So if you to minimize a flurry of emails to me and or Fran and Les, sit tight, we'll get it up. It may not be up until Monday if it's not there right now. Are there any other hands raised, Judy?
Fine.
Yours, go ahead.
Okay. I have a mastermind group that meets weekly, and the next one is going to start in September. You can find out more information on my website, and I've got something that's free for you to do. If you want to have a virtual coffee with me, say you're stuck on some aspect of your book marketing, you can book a 20-minute call with me, and we will go over what's keeping you stuck, and I will probably be able to help you get unstuck. So that's bookmarketingmentor.com, and I put that link in the chat.
Awesome. And Marlene, I didn't see you, but where are you?
She's in the second screen.
Marlene, you're up.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone. I just want to invite you all to Writers Forum, Zoom, obviously online. It's free. Wednesdays at 6:30, Sundays at 2 p.m. Sean kicked it off. It was an amazing event, Sean. I really enjoyed it. So Writers Forum, you're all welcome. You can go to my website, which I'm going to put in the chat box. Go to my website for the schedule. The next one tomorrow is with Susan Bono. It's going to lead us in a writing activity. For those of you who know Susan, she's awesome. You're in for a treat. If you don't know her, you're still in for a treat. And then August 19th, Ted Moreno, who is a hypnotherapist, is going to lead us through a relaxation activity, and then I'll lead us into a writing exercise. So awesome writing gets done that way. So you're all invited.
Thank you. Roger, you're up.
Sean, just a reminder, this isn't for me, but Cher is hosting a salon on Saturday the 22nd from 1 to 2:30. And she said that she already had all of the readers filled. But I want to remind everyone that you're all invited to participate in that salon, even if you're not a reader, and listen to the dozen or so readers we have. So I'm going to send out the Zoom invites. So if you want to register, you can go to our website and register, or you can send me an email and say, I want to be part of the salon. Send me a link and I will do so. So that's membership@redwoodwriters.org, or there's, most of you probably have my other addresses, but contact Cher or contact me, because it may seem like it's closed out, but it isn't closed out to listeners. So we want you all to participate. Oh, I will say, just for Fran's benefit, I've had a request from a club to republish as many garden stories, garden poems, as Fran and Les have published in the last 4 years. So we're going through all of the collections to pick out stories, and then we'll contact the authors to get their permission to reprint their poems about gardens, because it's going into a club's garden book.
That's awesome. I don't see any other hands, and I'm going to flip two screens. Marilyn's got her hand up, and I'm going to pass it over to her anyway, because she gets to announce next month's speaker and close it out and say thank you again to Alia. And the meeting next month will be on the third Saturday, as it always is, same time. There will be, I'll let you know now, we're changing the Zoom link because it's coming over to me until we get a club link. So if you've saved this, not to worry, we'll get it all to you. We'll make sure that people get logged in. And by the way, if anybody is an Express member and you actually had to pay today, please email treasure@redwoodwriters.org, and Milena will gladly refund your money because you've already prepaid as an Express member. So Marilyn, go ahead and close it out if you will.
Okay, well, in keeping with the high bar that a couple of our people here today, Amanda and McTighe and Alia Volz, have set with our featured presentations. Thank you both, and especially you today, Alia, for a wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it. So in September, Lise Quintana will be joining us for her featured presentation on submissions to Indie Lit, how to submit to a literary journal using some of the online submission managers. So I think that should be a really interesting presentation and fun as well. Then we'll be moving, I'll just give you a glance. What's really kind of wonderfully amazing to me is that we're actually booked with speakers through next May, which I don't know whether that's a record or not, but it feels like a record, so I'll just declare. Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. But we coming up in October is Derek Moore. I believe he was with, see, Chrissy, if you're here, you can probably speak to this, but with Press Democrats, the journalist, right?
I don't work there anymore.
Okay.
I haven't worked there for 2 years, but I do, while I'm interrupting,
Yes.
there is some questions in chat right now. And one of them is how people can get a copy of Alia's slides. Will those be sent out?
Judy
Yes,
can
if
answer
Alia
that.
sends them, if Alia sends them to me, I send out an email follow-up to all registrants, only to registrants, with the video, and if we have slides, I send that. There'll be a link to those too so that you can download them. So there's no attachments in the email itself. You, as a recipient, will download.
Okay. All right, so very quickly then, just want to mention that in November 8th, it's a little bit not the same schedule, that's a Sunday, but Forrest Gander, who is the 2019 Pulitzer Prize winner for poetry, will be our featured speaker. And so we're really looking forward to that. Then, as I mentioned, we're actually booked through next May, so I won't take any more time, but we have, I think we'll probably show that, if not in then on the website. Does that make sense, Chrissy? You know, what's coming down the next few months for speakers. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I got a little bit of work to do, but the whole goal for everybody is to have at least 2 to 3 months of speakers lined up. So you know what's coming up. You can make arrangements accordingly because not everybody comes to every single meeting. In fact, there's 300 members. We have 47 that showed up today. So spread the word. I'm going to put a shameless plug in for the club. There's people that want to hear our speakers. If we're 300 strong and there's 47 in here, if everybody invites 1 or 2 other people, my goal is to max this out. We've got 100 seat capacity. In the next 2 to 3 months, I'd like to push that limit. So thank you all for being here. Thank you again. Is it pronounced Alia or Alia? I should have asked you that.
It's actually Alia, but Alia, I don't mind Alia, so I didn't correct you. It's
Alia sounds just as good, if not better. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for another wonderful meeting. Meeting adjourned. We'll see you in a month.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. It was really fun.
Good to see you all.
Good to see you.
Great to see everybody. Okay, see you next month.